What up? This is Myron, and you are checking out, if you're checking us out on YouTube, the Rye Bread and Mustard, a Mariners podcast. Down on the docks, on the other side of the tracks, 5-star dive bar podcast that we are doing live from the Radisson Hotel down here in Oakland, our usual stomping grounds when we are down here in Oakland, as you can see. And if you have come back to Mariner Land here, it is the final chapter of the Mariners down here in Oakland. Mariners finished a 2-game win, but a 2-game. Sorry, they won the last 2 games. Some technical. There we go. We're.
You're frozen up. It's a great halftime show you're putting on here. You hear anything? Well, Myron's down in Oakland, finished off the series with the Mariners. Second favorite ballpark, the Oakland Alameda Coliseum. Yeah, he went down there for it. But, after this road trip, I put the nail in the coffin, but he's telling me now that he's getting out his cat's claw, the nail puller, and going to pull him out after 2 threes here for Seattle Mariners. I just can't believe it. There is still hope from you.
Yes, a disclaimer. Anything that Hansen is saying, he is probably dead on behind the scenes. But yes, I would say I gave my concession speech to you the other night, but you know what? I'm gonna Al Gore this shit, and I am taking it back. Since I've been down in Oakland, the Mariners have picked up 2 games. Didn't get down here until the 3rd game of the series. Saw the 16-run output, which also frustrates you as a fan, right? Like where you're like, why can't we spread 2 or 3 of those runs? 4 of those runs over the last 4 days, but that's not how baseball works. We know this. And again, thank you for the people that are hanging on here on the YouTube side. Technical difficulties here at the beautiful Radisson Hotel. So this episode's going to be about what's happened here in the last week. We did not have a episode on Labor Day, and that was for 2 reasons. One, it's a holiday. That's the cover-up story, right, Hanno?
Yeah.
But I think it was how the Anaheim series ended and how the Oakland series was starting, and it was a precursor to Tuesday nights. And that's when I called you personally and gave my concession. Said, hey, I'm still going down to Oakland because I got to go back to L.A., and these are non-refundable tickets. But it's been nothing but fun down here since then.
Yeah, it looks like you've had a good time. I've seen a lot of stuff that you've posted. Oakland has always been near and dear to your heart, and you've always enjoyed the trip. How are you holding up, seeing your last game ever there?
Well, before we get into the Mariner stuff, I'm glad you asked me. I had a moment this morning, here at the hotel. I was going to go slip into the gym, and just didn't feel like it. And let's be honest, the gym here isn't all that great. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go take a jog around the stadium. I'm glad I did. Didn't have my weight vest to run with, but I had my bulletproof vest. No, I didn't need that down here in Oakland. Might need that in Ballard by the Ballard Bridge. That's a whole nother story. We'll get into that. But yeah, I went for a run around the stadium area around there in Oracle, or I believe it's still called that. or the Oakland Arena, I believe what it's called. I was running around, and yes, I've been coming here. I think this was my first road stadium I ever went to go watch a game in. I believe that was back in 2001. But in the last 8 or 9 seasons, it's been pretty religious of coming here, maybe, and sometimes twice a year. But yeah, I took a run around the stadium, had the Too Legit to Quit MC Hammer song playing. Yep, Too Legit to Quit. Too legit. Wait, too legit to, and then you go quit. If you're missing that on the podcast side, we just showed you what it is. We just aged ourselves. I had that shit on repeat. I think once a Humpty Dance popped in there, Let That Fly, because that's Bay Area. Rest in peace, Shock G, aka Humpty Hump. But yeah, I was running around that stadium, just checking stuff out, thinking about all the times coming here. And one of the things I never ever did was I never walked over to those seats that you see out in the parking lot that were part of the stadium when the Raiders would play here. And actually, I have that loaded up. Well, let me see if this video is too loud. I'll cut it. But as you can see, I went over to the seats. I was hoping to sit in these seats, but they have them fenced off. But you can see how big and large of a space Oakland has. And I mean, it's so weird. I haven't gotten into all the politics about why they can't have a stadium, but there's plenty of place to build down there in the parking lots. I would say it was just like kind of how the Kingdome was before they knocked it down, where T-Mobile is and where WAMU is, and is that what it's still called now? WAMU Theater, and where Seahawks Stadium's at. It's similar. There might even be more room here, but they couldn't get it done, and unfortunately, they're going to be going up to Sacramento for the next 3 years. Not my favorite town in California. I've probably spent more time there in the train stations, the airports, and the Greyhound going back to my college days. So maybe I should take back my description of the town, but it's going to be interesting, right?
Yeah, playing in a AAA stadium. I mean, I saw someone mention this on one of the message boards. I mean, with Oakland, how good they've been playing, and they looked really good those first 2 games of the series. They're an up-and-coming team. Could you imagine if they make the playoffs and they have to host a game in a AAA stadium? That'd be wild.
Yeah, I mean, Toronto was going to have to do that.
Yeah,
possibly.
True.
But I think maybe not. Maybe that wasn't a year where they were going to do all that down at the down in Texas or Miami.
Oh yeah, because it was a COVID thing. That's right. That's why they were in Buffalo.
But sure, yeah, that is going to be interesting. I wonder if that is the case, would they just, use San Francisco? San Francisco's been, very accommodating. It seems like, of course they are. They're like, oh, you're moving? Oh, great. You know what I mean? Of course. Oh, yeah. Let me help you. Whatever you need. When you come to town, sure. That's kind of like what's going on there. Yeah. I'll tell you the saddest thing about it is it's the fans. I went earlier today. They tailgate. They're outside the stadium. They allow you to tailgate. They charge you an arm and a leg to park at the stadium, but they don't care if you break out, stoves and barbecues. It feels like a Seahawks game. It feels like an NFL game when you go to the games here. I'll play a little bit of the footage. If it's too loud, I'll cut it out. But here's like what it looks like early. This is what it kind of looks like on a day game. You got people out there selling all this cool swag. And then as you can see far off into the distance there's a bunch of tents set up with barbecue stuff.
How was their prices of all their stuff?
If you're in a parking lot, you could get a snapback hat for $20. You can get a Profit hat for $25. You can get a sweatshirt for 30, 40, somewhere in there. It's a lot cheaper than the stadium. That's for sure. And Yeah, as far as the stadium and them not being here yet, it's a closing the chapter. But if you think about it, and we'll get into some Mariner stuff here shortly, but if you think about how many playoff games, whether it's NFL, MLB, you think about the good Oakland A's teams of the late 80s, early 90s, even in the 2000s, they were that team that just always made the playoffs. They're Moneyball, right? Going back to the 70s, Reggie Jackson was doing his thing in there. You know, when I walked out of the stadium, you walk out of the Catfish Hunter. That's the entrance I walked out today. I walked in the Dennis Eckersley gate, which is out in the outfield. Just that in those hollowed grounds. I mean, they have not move this stadium or move from stadiums. There's so many great games that even when you look at a place like T-Mobile Park, and not to be so a downer, I doubt by the time they got to fix or move T-Mobile Park, we might be long gone. I don't know if they're going to match all of the success that stadium had.
Oh yeah, you're exactly right. All those world championships, I mean, that you're right. That place hosted a lot of playoff baseball, and the Raiders played there a few times, and they were good. But yeah, the baseball, Oakland A's baseball, has got a storied history, and it's so sad to see it go like it has. You're right. The fans, some of the best, and they just don't deserve it. Just such a shame.
I'll tell you it is, and I'll tell you something that I purposely did today. I went up to the box office, and I was like, "Boy, I hope I didn't make the wrong decision here." But I didn't have tickets for today. Didn't think it was going to be a sellout, but I didn't know what they were going to sell me a ticket for. Look, $16 was the cheapest one to get in, but they give you paper tickets there too. So I made sure I got a paper ticket. Um, uh,
Yeah, I mean that's cool. I don't know. They don't do that here anymore. I don't think it all is computerized, or maybe they do. I don't know.
I've seen people bootleg the paper tickets. I think it's those, the right field, the tickets that never really get sold. I think T-Mobile Park will still give you paper tickets for that. But anytime I've been to the window, they want your phone. It's a long ass transaction. Like they're like, "What's your email? What's going?" It's not just like, "Boom, here's the money, here's the ticket." But I also wanted to show you this, Hannah. I made sure, shout out to Tim and Edgar's and Christy and everybody out there. I made sure I left. I'm sure it'll get swept up, but I made sure I left one of the fake tin cups they have from Edgar's. Made sure I left that right in there. Drank out of that today, and as you can see in this picture, also stuck a rye bread and mustard sticker on the back of one of the bleacher seats there, or not bleachers.
Yeah.
This is right off the dugout. My biggest regret was not knowing if I had one regret of all the times I've been to that stadium, and maybe it was new this year. They had the potato bar, and let me just show you this.
Wow.
It is a stuffed baked potato, only $13. And to answer a question earlier, Hanno, you wanted to know what this was on my shirt, on my rye bread and mustard shirt.
Yeah.
And your guess was that a seagull, and there are lots of seagulls around the stadium there, just like in
Yeah.
Seattle.
Yeah.
You're guessing this was a seagull.
Yeah. A very one that's been fed well.
Yeah, well, I'm the Fedwell Seagull. What it actually was they give you sauces, and I just couldn't help myself to open the sauce and stop eating. I had to do both at the same time. I ripped open the sauce, and it shot all over my shirt right there. But yeah, it really got real just before we wrap this up about the stadium. I found myself in that ninth inning when Oakland was coming back a little bit. Of course, I did not want this to happen. Right now, every game, every inning is so stressful if you're holding on to hope like myself. But I do have to say, when Munoz got 2 outs, 2 strikes, and all the Mariners fans that were there were standing up, I wanted a 9-10 pitch at bat because I wasn't ready to let it go. And here's the thing. Let's close out this segment. And we'll get into some, current events and shit with showing you from the stands point of view the final out really quick.
Yeah. Before you do, real quick, it's also the stadium where Junior got his first career major league hit.
Yeah, and he was there last night.
Yeah.
He was, yes. I did not see him today in the hot ass sun, but he snuck in there. I think maybe had some sort of like layover, had to gas up the jet, and was like, "Oh, I wanted to pop into town." But no, it bookended it for him. That was his first hit. It was great listening to Rick Riz and him talk about that. If you have not listened to that, go check that out. I'm gonna show you two things real quick. This was the final out. This is kind of what it was like in the stands. But as you could, did you hear the guy yell, "Bring out the bulldozers"?
Yeah, that's what made me laugh.
And you know what I'm gonna miss about that stadium? They got the guys with the horns, like the horns you hear at the torchlight parade, going all over the place. The cowbell guy was sitting a row in front of me, 2 seats over. It's an older gentleman. And then, of course, the guy on the drum banging those drums all last night. This is what the Mariners were rooting. The Mariners did not stop. I think he just goes there for drum practice. I don't even know if he's really into the game. But, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more this offseason. We'll focus in on the A's. And we got another A's series, the last series of the season. Hopefully it means something. But we'll get into it. We got the Jerry Dipoto news. We got what are we thinking right now with the Mariners? We'll get into all of that, all of the current events right after this.
Get ready to play hardball in the Kingdom.
Take me to the ball game. I want to see the M's. The Mariners are playing hardball. Did it again and again and again. Did it again.
Princess Tours, the vacation company, brings you the best show in baseball when the San Diego Chicken plays hardball with the Seattle Mariners and the Baltimore Orioles tonight in the Kingdom.
Rye Bread and Mustard, a Mariners podcast.
We have the one and only Mr. Tom Hutler. Do you have any of your favorite stories from the Kingdom?
There was a time we had an earthquake, and so they were going to evacuate the building. So I was like getting up to go and leave, and they go, "No, you can't go. You got to read these safety things." It's like,
do we need to tell them that there's smoking's only on the exterior ramps?
Yeah. And Dave came shooting past. He signed off. I'm going, wait, I'm the only one here.
Listen and subscribe to Rye Bread and Mustard, a Mariners podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Hanno. I didn't get to hear your opening statements here, but because I had some technical difficulties here at the hotel. But I'm assuming you were saying you don't think it can happen, and I'm still holding on to, as you've said in our private conversations, you're being delusional.
I didn't come out and say that, but I said, yeah, with the road trip, even though they've won these last 2 games, I put a nail in the coffin. But you got out the cat's claw, a little tool to remove nails, and you have got the faith again.
Well, here's why I have the faith. This is one thing I have to bring up. There hasn't been a team, and none of the teams that we are dealing with, whether it's the wild card or the Astros, there's nobody that's just walked away, and just said let's be honest. Houston's done some losing here in the last couple of weeks, and the Mariners have not been able to capitalize on it. Where do I get off saying that? When that I think the Mariners are going to get hot and go on a streak when we haven't seen it? That's the crazy talk you're talking about when I'm talking about that. Like, what have the Mariners shown any of us this season that they can rattle off, a 9 out of 10, maybe even more? I don't know. But the one thing I do have to say, and I know baseball's day to day, you flush the next game. They've played these games very closely. They're playing teams that are hungry. The A's have been playing good. And as you mentioned before, this is a team you probably would project back in the playoffs in the next 2 to 3 years. You always know these are the toughest teams especially this part of the season. The Mariners' schedule isn't that much easier than Houston, but what I've seen here in the last couple of days, and maybe it was some sort of rallying call. I mean, they're playing pretty smart, sound baseball here in the last couple of games, and they just have to eliminate the going to sleep. Is it easier said than done? Am I being wishful about it? Sure, but look, the Mariners only 4.5 out. If you can get to 2 games out before you go down to the House of Horrors in Houston, I think you got a shot. Does that mean they're going to have to win some other road games to probably convince you and everybody else and themselves before then? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hear where you're coming from. I just go to the fact of, let's talk about these last 2 games. You know, they scored the most runs they've scored since what, like 16 or something like that? 2016 or maybe 18. I don't remember what they said, which was unheard of. And then, I mean, this is a game the Mariners do win. Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh, both with home runs. We've seen that this year when both of them get off.
Yeah,
The
isn't that
Mariners usually
something?
win. Yeah, and they hit the long ball, and then Luke Raley adds on. So, you know, we've seen this, but they just haven't been consistent. But I like to kid you, but I do think that it's just too much to overcome, and it's just so heartbreaking, especially, you know, with where they were and now where they are.
Yeah.
But there is a chance.
Yeah, there's still a chance right there, and I get it. What's the saying? There's a long way to go and a short time to get there, you know? So what is left now going into this weekend? Are we down to 21 games? Or are we down to 20 games? Somewhere in there. I don't have the schedule right up in front of me, keeping this show very bare bones, but yes, you need to come out of this weekend. When next time we have a podcast, we want to be at the absolute worst 4.5 out. Like, you want to be where you are right now. You can't lose ground and going into another week. You can make up some ground next week, but also I look at the Mariners schedule in my head that I know. We got St. Louis. You are going to a bona fide baseball town, at full stadium, no matter how the team is. And if you look at St. Louis, they have a similar record than us. They are who they are, right? So this is going to be tough. If the Mariners can come out swinging like they've done here, and also Dan Wilson and Edgar Martinez, even though it's Dan's team, I still kind of feel like Edgar's got a lot to do with everything because he has the toughest task, and that's turning these bats around. If they start making the lineup like how they made it today, and by that, there's a huge discussion I want to have right now. They need to go with who's hot, and that's that. I can't say this enough. I'll scream it from the mountaintops. Victor Robles should be, at least for the rest of this year, the Mariners' leadoff hitter. And I'll say this too. I'd like to see a little bit more Mitch Garver.
Did he have a nice game again today?
He didn't play. He had 4 RBIs yesterday. Doesn't play today. It was kind of odd. I thought he would be catching today. I don't know why. I mean, Mitch Garver's hitting all right. Am I crazy? With him and Haniger, it's like whoever's hotter. Later in a game, I'd probably have Haniger if that's who your DH was. And I'm gonna get burnt up for saying that, but I mean, it's about who's hot. It was fair that they had JP try out. It was fair that they brought JP back to play shortstop. I did not agree with the hitting him first. That backfired on them. Him out at shortstop, sure. But then you put somebody that was playing good, Leo Rivas, on the bench for a week. You watch him play today in this last game. You can tell he has rust on him. He's still in that developing age where you got to play all the time. And if they're hot, they're hot. I don't know what you do down the stretch with that situation. Let's talk about the leadoff spot.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Rivas should be up there. They put him down in the 9 hole when JP came back. And Robles looked good, and he worked his way up the lineup, after hitting down in the 9-hole for a while. Then he got up to, I think, as high as maybe 6 or 7, and he still continued to hit. And like you mentioned before, he can steal you some bags, unlike JP. The on-base percentage, the average, they speak for themselves. I'm more willing to have JP play short. But yeah, just hit him down in the lineup. I do think Robles should hit lead off. He's a spark plug. He's an energizer guy too. I know you're going to talk about this play he had today where he manufactured the run for you on the bases.
Yeah, and that's not the first time we've seen that. I remember when he did this back in Anaheim earlier on in the season, and I'll again scream this to the. From the mountaintops, and that is sorry, somebody was distracting me over here. That's the cost of doing a game in a bar. So back in Anaheim, there was that game where I think it was the last game. It was the game. It was like 100 degrees. It was hot, and Victor Robles got you a run after you got a run early, I believe. And we saw that for the first time. He gets on and ends up scoring on his own. And then you start looking at his average and you started looking at what he's doing. And you're like, this guy's good. I hit you up about it. And you're like, I don't know about, we'll see. Well, yeah. And it's like, because he's one of those project guys, right? Like he's a project. And a lot of the time, especially in the Jerry Dipoto era, that has not worked out. Well, this situation had. But again, you see that from that moment. I watched the same thing today in game 3 here, or game 4, excuse me. He gets on, I believe he gets hit by a pitch. He is on base when Julio gets a Northwest Little League single, ball right through the wickets. And the ball goes through the third baseman's legs off the wickets of the glove, but he gets a little bit on it. So the ball kind of like gets behind him, and Victor Robles makes his way to third base. Nobody's covering. So now it's first and third. Cal hits that sac fly. Was a big run.
Oh yeah.
It turned out to be a big run. Those are the kinds of things that he does. He's on base 2, 3, 4 times a game. The guy bunts for base hits. Yeah. Maybe he does that a little bit more than you want to see him do it all the time, but he's damn successful at it that I'm like, green light. He doesn't get caught stealing. We haven't seen that, knock on wood, that, eventually that's going to happen. That's what you got. And then he's hitting 288. And then you go and you look at JP and he's hitting 96, 197, 195, somewhere in there. And listen, he's hitting below that just to get to have his average drop that low.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
To me, that's the easiest part of the lineup to fill out. I'd be like, number 1, Victor Robles. Everything else, the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, subjective. The computer will figure out, or Dan Wilson. But the easiest thing to me right now is Victor Robles needs to be your leadoff hitter for the next 20 games.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with a team that struggles scoring runs. If you can have a guy that can steal you runs like you mentioned, the Mariners need all of that to be successful. I mean, they need to have productive outs, hitting the ball behind guys, and getting guys over from second to third in the scoring position. They need all of that. They need all the help they can get. We've seen if Cal and Julio don't have the games like they did in the 4th game where they hit the ball at the ballpark, the M's struggle. So, yeah, they need some kind of spark like that, and he gives you that. I totally agree with you that he should be hitting first and setting the table for those other guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the crazy thing about Mitch Garver, if he starts looking like the Mitch Garver we've seen all year, of course not, but he's looked a bit different. I think the change with Edgar Martinez, whether Edgar's changed something or whether it was just like here's a fresh start, with everybody else, he's looked different at the plate.
Yeah, I mean, it could be just as simple as getting a couple hits and getting the confidence going too. All of us that have played the game, no matter if we played t-ball or high school or college or whatever, you get a couple hits, you're feeling a lot better facing a pitcher up there. And I'm sure with the awful year that Mitch has had, it sure felt good to get some hits going and feeling a little bit more comfortable out there. So, yeah, give him a chance. I mean, I hope he does good and finishes the season off strong. It's been a tough year for him.
Yeah, another guy you want to see more from than that we've got, and it's not that it's been bad, but you're still waiting for Randy Arozarena to just take over games. We haven't seen that yet. That's something that needs to happen here in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his drive, his attitude have been questioned here lately, especially with a few of the plays that he's had, that strike him out, throw him out play down there in Oakland where he gave up on it. Those are tough things to see. You hear about, when Tampa was in town, he was all in their clubhouse and talking to those guys, and it just gives you the mind frame that he just doesn't want to be here. But hopefully, as long as he shows more effort, I don't have a problem with him.
Yeah, it's you kind of feel like, is he on board? Is he not on board? But he also doesn't seem to get shook in moments. So it's just we're getting to know him on a everyday basis versus just the highlights and all the good stuff. And you know how bad I've wanted that guy on this team. So but yes, I still want to see him take over a game. I look at the acquisition of JT. I like what we're getting from him. Everything is fine. There's nothing there that I'm like, come on, man. He's giving you what he's going to give you right now at this point in his career. And Turner's a winner. I look at Shagwa. I'm still saying it wrong. Let's call him Shaggy. I guess that's his nickname. Want to get him. He was also thrust in this team of being like, maybe I'm a sixth, seventh inning guy. No, now you're the seventh or the eighth. To me, he's basically Stanek. And he's kind of doing that. And then we've talked about Snyder and his stuff. Let's get into that. The bullpen I don't know what we can do there. Besides Munoz being like a little bit more on his game, but he's also not pitched as much. He's also been thrown in not winning situations of late, where he's just closing things out, I should say. Obviously, he's got to get back into that dominant mode, which I think he can. But everything in between that and him is questionable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking at this bullpen now, I personally don't have that confidence in them. But speaking of Munoz, it's hard when the M's, as of late, haven't pitched him much, or if they have, they get walked off. He needs to pitch a lot more, and his end of the season kind of routine just really hasn't had one, and maybe that screwed him up. And they even talked about putting him in the other night, and they decided to hold off, so he's probably got a little injury thing going on. I don't know. Have you heard anything as far as that?
No, I haven't heard anything like that, but I would assume so. I mean, again, all of these guys in this bullpen, if you asked any of them how many innings they projected they were going to pitch, whether they were on AAA, whether they are on another team, I bet you it's nowhere near what they've gotten.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I remember the trade deadline telling you, man, this team is going to either die with this bullpen or they're going to pull them over the finish line at the end of the season. And it's been rough, but with all the injuries and all the guys moving up a slot in the kind of the order out of the pen, guys like Snyder, like you mentioned, that are in these new roles, have never had it. Even the new guy, Taylor, I mean, he finally pitched in a high leverage game where it was either tied or the Mariners had the lead, and he's looked good too. So there are some promising things, but every time they go out there in a tight game, it's tough to feel that confident with them like I have in years past.
Mm-hmm. Hanno, did you just see right there on the screen? One of our listeners, Seth, is one of the regular contributors. I love Seth here. He says Munoz has been dealing with elbow swelling, apparently, per Daniel Kramer.
Well, that's good to know, but that's also freaking a
Good to know
pitcher
for the
with
show.
Yeah,
good
a
to know
pitcher
for the
with-
show, not for the real thing.
Yeah, but a pitcher with elbow swelling, yikes. That doesn't sound good.
Yeah. It's elbow swelling and swelling somewhere else that you don't want to swell. Those are the two worst things you want to hear. Thanks, Seth. Well, thanks for the concerning news, but thanks for the show. We also had Parmesan LeBron. Also, he knows we're in Oakland. He says he's live from Aurora. Is that something that you want to broadcast? That's I keep on whatever. Yeah. So again, though, the Mariners have 21 games as of now, and we keep on doing these estimations of what our goals are. All the year it's been bad. The last couple of seasons when we were doing this podcast, we were right there. We're going like, this is what we need. All right, cool. It was a game over, a game under. Our expectations have not been met, obviously. And I do want to say this. There are 15 games. I hate doing this because it feels like we're doing the same thing. There are 15 games until you play Houston. So you got 15 games to me to make up 2.5 to 3 games. That's the goal.
Yeah, and I'm very, very concerned about this next road trip in St. Louis. I could just see them just, having to fly halfway across the country to finish off the road trip. I just am nervous about it. You mentioned how St. Louis isn't having their best of years, but they still are a big baseball town, and they're pretty much have the same record as the Mariners. I'm concerned. I could just see a letdown, but I sure hope that's not the case.
Right. And speaking of, letdowns, the road's been a letdown. I believe, and I might be off by a game or two, maybe a game. The Mariners would need to run the table on the road, I believe, to finish 500 on the road. They still might finish under 500. How many games are they under 500, Hannah?
I remember the last time we talked before they went to Anaheim, they were 11 games under, and they've lost, 4 more and 1, 2, so what's that, 13?
So they're 13. So they are going to have an under 500 record. They've clinched that. So anyways, I will say this. The Mariners travel schedule after they have to go to St. Louis is not hard because they have the Padres at home, the Rangers at home, the Yankees at home. Then they go to Texas, or they go down to play the Rangers, and then they go to Houston. So it's not that bad. Then you finish up with the A's. It's not as bad as a travel schedule. This trip, sure. I feel like it would be more accommodating, obviously, if you went Anaheim, Oakland, either or to end, and you started this trip with St. Louis.
Oh, totally agree. But
yeah,
thinking about the rest of that schedule, you mentioned the Yankees, and San Diego. I mean, both those teams that's going to be tough. But yeah, just one game at a time.
One game at a time. We had a comment here. Polanco's 2 for his last 34. It's time to sit him down more frequently. More Rivas and more JP. Well, I can't sign on to the more JP over Polanco. I think Polanco can get himself out of this. He kind of seems like the Polanco that we've got to see this year, it's definitely streaky. It's up and down. He's in a down right now. Maybe he'll twist it around. Anytime I do see Polanco like dive onto the ground and miss a ball, I'm like, man, is he going to be in the lineup tomorrow? He looks a little rough when he gets up from those types of things. So yeah, maybe some more DH. But here's the thing: if Garver, I know I sound crazy. With Garver kind of swinging a decent bat at DH, and you have Luke Raley who hit an amazing home run. You don't win that game without Luke Raley's home run. And it was a big home run because the inning before there was an unfortunate situation on a pass ball, and the ball caromed right back to the catcher, and he threw out Rivas. I feel it was totally fine for Rivas and Robles to be on the move. It was just one of those, oh my God, situations. By the time the ball was back in his glove, he was a duck sitting out there. But yes, I'd like to see more Rivas. As far as more JP over Polanco, that's a hard sell for me. Even with Polanco in a downward trend.
Yeah, what I've noticed is definitely they're not playing Polanco when he has to hit right-handed. They've kind of moved away from that. I didn't know he was in that
And that's okay.
much of a slump. I mean, even and they've been playing more there. He had some terrible at bats this series,
Oh God, yeah.
but then he had a nice little game yesterday. But who didn't? In that 16-run game, and even now they have the opportunity to play or Urias at third and try to get something.
Had a
out of
good
him.
game.
Yeah,
Sure.
So
I'll tell you, he didn't have a great game, JP. He didn't have a great game. He had one single, but he didn't have a great game. But yeah, and as far as Polanco not hitting from the right side, if he's not hitting from the right side, we got plenty of right-handed bats.
yeah,
and especially on the infield end. So I'm okay with that. I look, we're saying all these things. We know that Dan Wilson and them are gonna do this as far as who's hot. Who's hot, who's healthy. Those are the two things. Let's just go into this 15-game window. I don't know how many games that means that you got to win. I would assume you got to win 9 or 10 out of these 15 to get close enough to Houston, and then do something that you really haven't been able to do, and that's in big games win down in Houston. I know that they have before, but they haven't had the stakes high down in Houston again since the last time they were there and in a high stakes game, and the Robbie Ray game.
yeah.
So
yeah.
but they haven't been able to go down there and win in these situations yet. Will this change? We will see. It depends how Houston's playing when you get down there too.
Yeah, and they definitely need to pick up the games like they did these last two when Houston kicks a few. I think the previous 5 losses that Houston had, the Mariners did not capitalize and lost that game as well. So they need some of that mojo back too. They can't lose any more games, but they especially can't lose games that Houston loses.
Yes. And this is the most unstable Houston group that we've seen in the last 6, 7, 8 years. It's if the Mariners just played 500 from where they were at, which would have been a downgrade when you're 13 games over 500, you'd be all right. But they haven't. And like I said, I don't feel like besides Houston, they've had 2 really good streaks, but they've also had those. They'll lose 4 out of 5 games this season. I'm sure if you ask a Houston Astros fan, they're very frustrated with the way things have happened. They've also been banged up, and we will see. But if the Mariners can't make any ground here in the next 15 games, which includes the Padres, which includes the Yankees, which includes a trip to St. Louis, playing the Texas Rangers that you just haven't played well in the last couple of years. It's definitely scary, but it's a very Mariner thing to take care of business against the tough teams and then just shit the bed, against the other teams. We also have apparently Kyle Tucker has been dealing with a fractured bone, so we'll see if that's an issue for us. I didn't even know if he was back or not. I think he's still not back, is he?
No, I think what he was just saying, he's still got that bone bruise and he's not back yet. So
perfect. Well, rest up, Mr. Tucker. Rest up. Your body and your health is number one. Well, we got to finish up here. We'll take a quick break. I got to sling on over to the airport. But we do have to talk about the news that happened right before we went on to record this podcast, and that is the news of Jerry Dipoto seemingly going to be there for next season and maybe even beyond. So we'll have a couple quick thoughts about that, and we'll tuck y'all into bed.
Supercross this weekend in the Kingdom. The Coors Beer Supercross doubleheader. Get ready, Seattle, this Saturday night at 7:30 and Sunday afternoon at 2. The 1988 AMA Supercross Tour, Motorcycle Mania, on an incredible dirt battleground that treats man and machine the same way. With absolutely no respect. See the best. National champion Jeff Ward, former champion Ricky Johnson. Tickets at all Ticketmaster locations, including the Bond, Tower Records and Video, and participating Honda dealers. The Coors Beer Supercross.
So they're in the midst of this losing streak, and the Mariners go, our 2025 spring training schedule has arrived. Check out the full slate of games in Arizona. This was their fucking post. They were showing the Cactus League schedule. This was their post. There was nobody in there just to go, I don't know, let's hold off on that one. We didn't even get into these comments. Great series, guys. I genuinely can't take it anymore. Looking forward to it since we won't be making the playoffs. Fire Service, fire Dipoto. Who the hell cares? Fire Service already. There needs to be a serious discussion about Scott Service right now. Lauren Stewart says, Seattle Mariners, you got to love these guys, ... in Peoria.
Oh, God.
So right before we went on, just like we said, Seattle Times breaking: Mariners ownership has decided to move forward. When I was reading this, I thought moving forward away, but no, it's moving forward with Jerry Dipoto as president of baseball operations for 2025 and potentially beyond. Sources told Seattle Times. This comes from Divish. Kind of seemed like a foregone conclusion that he wasn't done. I think he would have moved on with Scott, but I get it. If you thought he was going to be gone, I guess there is a case for that. But for me, if he was going to be gone, he would have already been gone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not surprised at this at all. He's one lucky son of a gun, though, to be with a team for 9 years and build a team and only get one playoff opportunity. But he does what he's supposed to do for the Mariner ownership. You know, he is the guy that goes out there, gets beat up, and keeps the Mariners just in it here and there, and keeps people interested. But yeah, I'm just lost for words.
I will say this. I do have to say this. Remember what his title is here: President of Baseball Operations. Does that mean hey, we needed a new manager? You got one. Still, and we know that went over his head because there was no vetting process, right? Does that mean also there could be a new general manager? Because he's not the general manager. Is there a possibility he's going to go out and be forced to get another general manager? Because I feel like your general manager, sure, they draft people, X, Y, and Z, but mainly it's what's going on the field right now. And that's been the problem. All these players that they've got, just like you said, or you've said to me, and you're saying right there where you're surprised, there hasn't been many success stories. Bullpen success stories, yes. Victor Robles, yes. But outside of that, you have had success, but then you let these successes walk out the door. I will still scream from the mountaintops. I think the Gino Suarez trade was terrible, and somehow not keeping Teo just didn't work out. Letting them both go was crazy to me. That's almost 200 RBIs just from what they gave you last year together. It's about 40 or 50 home runs just off what they gave you last year together. Want to get away from strikeouts? Well, no.
You still got to
You didn't get
fill the production. We talked about that, and they just didn't.
No. You hitched your trailer to more strikeouts, the bigger trailer, dumpster fire. But also the drafts and some of the other successes. Yes, you could weigh that. As far as the 9 years somewhere, one playoff, that's sucks. And some people want to go, well, he had a rebuild. Yeah, but he inherited a good team. Those teams were right there. They were a piece here and there away from competing and getting into the postseason. And then, of course, you plunged it, and here we are. But we'll talk a bit more about that. We'll talk about it a lot. I'm trying to stay away from that stuff, Hanno, because I know that's the shit that we're going to be talking about November, December, January. Like, I'm not looking forward to all those discussions, but it's part of the gig. And so that's why I'm laying off of that for now as much. But yes, I'm not surprised, but I'm not overjoyed. But I'm also like, yeah, I get it. I'm gonna watch out, and I'm just gonna go out on a limb and go, let's see what happens to the shadow, Justin Hollander.
Well, yeah, they even mentioned in that article that he just got signed an extension this last year. But everything stops with Jerry. He has final say on everything as far as moves and stuff like that. And so even though we do have the shadow who's involved with a lot of things, Jerry's the final say.
Absolutely.
Unless it's the ownership wanting to go out and get a manager who they're very familiar with.
Speaking of final say, I always have the final say here on the podcast, just about. We got out of here. I got to go get on a plane. But I do want to say thanks for liking, subscribing. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Also don't have the usual podcast set up. Felt like I was going to travel a little bit lighter here on this. We are going to be, including Hanno, doesn't matter what is happening. Game 162, we will be at Tacos and Tequila. It is happening. More details on that for game 162. Hopefully it's a big one. If not, we'll be having
a Sunday.
It is. It's a bye week. It's a bye week for you. Yeah, for you. Anyways, again, thanks for liking, subscribing. Thanks to Parmesan LeBron out there on Aurora. Thank you, Seth, for giving us that. Thanks to everybody that we ran into down here in Oakland. We'll talk more about Oakland again. We fortunate that we get to finish with them. Again, if you're not subscribed, quit being a creeper. Just subscribe. Also, if you want to be down, if you want that street cred for rocking the rye bread, hit up at simply.cora. That's at simply.cora. And I'll just say quickly, when I say street cred, Cora, who makes these for us, I had an incident, Hanno, real quick. Somebody broke into my car down there by the Ballard Bridge, not here in Oakland, to be clear. Stole my computer, stole my wallet, stole my chain that means a lot to me from a special person in my life. Wallet had a couple $100 or so in it. They stole it. We hunted them down. Cora came with me, did what you're not supposed to do, confronted the person, got my computer back. So at least
just
we could do
because you used the locate my computer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did not. And then it was a little bit harder. It was going to get into some real physicality to get the necklace and the wallet that they didn't have. But I just shout out to Cora, who was there the whole entire time, also keeping me calm. Got the computer, cut our losses. So this podcast, if you got anybody to thank Cora by hitting her up and getting some rye bread and mustard Mariners podcast gear. Now, with that being said, Hanno, I got to roll. So you know what time it is. Charge. Actually, I got to fly, not roll. Well, I got to roll, then I got to fly, then I got to roll. But thanks Thanks, Cora, from Parmesan LeBron.
Now everybody.